All right, only 6 minutes late is a
I
record.
know. Yeah, it's
It's always the way with YouTube, isn't it? It was my fault for turning up 1 minute before the stream started, to be fair.
well, and honestly, I should have tried the output audio since Mac makes it ridiculously hard to get that working. But I'm gonna assume we're live. Um,
Okay.
it
Oh yeah,
says
here we
live
go.
on.
It's just starting.
You see it on yours, cool.
Yep. I'm seeing
So
it and I've got audio, so it's all going.
great. So today I have Poe the person with me. 2 years ago, 2018, Poe and I had a discussion. I think at the time I started something called JP's interview or JP interviews, but this one's just going to be more of a discussion. So I'm calling this new series "Let's Talk," and hopefully this will be
It's
the
a,
first of many. But
it's a lot less pressure on me as a. I'm not being interviewed. It's just I'm here as more of a guest, I suppose.
yeah, but you made me feel really good about the interview. Like every question I asked, you're like, "That's a good question." Yes. um, but just a quick intro of Poe, and then I want to do a quick um, comparison of then versus now. So, and correct me if I get anything wrong, but you've been doing YouTube for many years now. I think your first big video was back during the James Damore debacle, where he got fired from Google, and I think people who follow you, like myself, just found you really interesting what you had to say about women in tech, Jordan Peterson, the Bill C-16 stuff, and just your perspective on those kinds of things. But recently, I came across your video with Paul Vanderkay, and you guys were talking about religion, and I like the title that I guess you had come up with during that interview. Came for the culture war, stayed for the religion.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of my view of Jordan Peterson is that
Yeah.
I found all this stuff really interesting with the C-16 and everything. I'm sure whoever's watching this is familiar with him from all of that. But then also he started this biblical series just about a year afterwards or so, where he was doing it live. And if you've seen them, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But he looks at the Bible through a kind of psychological lens and like seriously analyzes it as a document for how to live your life, a sort of guidebook. And I was able to engage with the Christianity again in a way that I never had before.
Yeah. So I want to mostly talk about that, but before we get into that, I came up with a quick like then versus now. So 2 years ago, obviously your YouTube channel was much younger. How many subscribers are you up to now? Because I think at the time you had. I'm doing this from memory. I think you said 7,000, but
Yeah, it's kind of when I first started YouTube, I got the first 1,000 in the after that James Moore video went up, I got 1,000 subscribers in the first week or something.
oh wow.
And then after that, it's just been like a slow drop off. So I have 13,000 now,
Hey, that's
and
still
it
like
just comes from
twice as
like drips
much.
and drabs. And I don't really mind. To be honest, I thought I'd be further than I am now, but I've got a good solid audience, and I'm happy with the engagement I'm getting.
That's cool. Well, also what's different, I think in the last video you were in like a tent or something, and now you've upgraded to under a staircase. So I'm
I'm sure I was under here before, but now I'm not sure.
if you look at the video on my channel, you had some sort of like I don't know tarp
Oh, I think
tarp
it was. I
behind
think
you.
it was here, but I think I just had a curtain here.
Oh,
I
okay. So
wasn't
you're
sure.
you're in the same spot.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well,
That's
this is the
funny.
place where the webcam is. It's never been anywhere else.
So where you
But
guys have like a desk underneath there?
exactly. Yeah, it's kind of built into the wall. It's quite small though. The whole space is quite small. But yeah, the desk is just under here. I was going to mention to you, I wore my blazer today because I remember. You can remind me. I thought you were wearing a suit last time,
I was wearing a
and
blazer,
now
yeah.
I'm wearing the blazer and you're wearing a t-shirt.
I thought about it, but I was like, this is more casual anyway, so I decided to go more
Yeah.
casual.
All right. I
Um,
guess I'll interview you then today.
okay, that's fine. Actually, I anticipate some of that because once we get into the religious stuff, first of all, a lot of my friends still have a lot of questions for me because I went from diehard atheist to a Peterson fan to, oh, Christianity's kind of interesting to a Christian. And so I'm sure we'll have some pretty good discussion around that. The other thing I
Yeah.
think that's big news for you is you had a kid.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in that, I don't really remember a lot of what we talked about, but I do remember at the time that we were talking, at that time, it was when I had we were just sort of starting to think about a family, and that was kind of on my mind during the interview, although I didn't bring it up explicitly. But
Yeah,
yet my daughter's 1 year old now,
that's
so
amazing.
that was, you can kind of add that up. So a year plus the 9 months of pregnancy, it was like when we were thinking
Yeah.
about it.
How is it being a mother? Like, if you could describe that.
The best word I've found to describe it is relentless. It's
Mm,
uh, it's I always thought that the newborn phase would be the hardest bit because they're so needy, but actually she just used to sleep all the time, and then now she only sleeps a little bit during the day. And whenever she's awake, it's just like go go go. Like you can't sit down for a minute, and if you are sitting down, it's when you're like sitting down with her, and it's I mean it's really fun. It's good to be active all the time, but yeah, it's relentless
is she
in
at
a
the
good.
stage where she's like developing a personality? Are you able to distinguish her
Oh
from other
yeah.
babies now?
Yeah, well, that was great because when they're just lying down and like gurgling or whatever, it's really cute. But
Yeah,
just a baby, it's like every other
every
baby,
other baby. Yep.
cute little face. But yeah, she's got so much personality. She can't talk, but she talks anyway. Yeah,
She
constantly just
babbles.
bubble. And, yeah, a lot of babble talk, and yeah, she's trying to talk to us, which is really nice. Yeah, she likes us, I
Yeah,
think.
that's good.
Yeah,
That's.
yeah, it's been really fun.
I'm sure you guys are doing great. I know in your recent interview with Paul Vanderclay. Am I going to say his full name the whole time? Um, I'm just going to say Paul. You had kind of
We're on a
mentioned
first name.
how what's that?
I just said, well, you're on a first name basis. I
Yeah,
know.
I
I
mean,
know how it feels with you with your elders. You don't want to be that familiar with them. Like I have the same thing with my superiors at work, where everyone's just calling them like you know Rich or whatever, and it's like I don't know. I
yeah,
don't
it's
want to call
weird.
Mister Vanderclay.
Yeah, my last doctor visit, the doctor told me to just call him Jim. It was the strangest. Like, okay, sure. But no, Paul. I would actually love to talk to Paul. I might have scared him a little bit on Twitter because, like, I was just so impressed by kind of some of the stuff that came up in your guys' interview that I started watching some of his other stuff and blasted him with some thoughts and ideas, and he was really attentive and responsive, which was cool. But, um, but no, I'll call. Yeah, I'll just say Paul for now. But I was impressed by some of the stuff that was said in your guys' interview, and now I lost my train of thought. What was the what was the thing? Oh, so you had said to him that uh, that something that really stood out to me was that all of your favorite people were raised by your mother, or something like
Well,
that. And I
well,
thought that is such a sweet compliment, and hopefully, your kids will say that about you someday.
yeah, well, I hope so. Well, yeah, that was just like a flippant thing because it's so hard to get on with your parents sometimes when you're an adult and they're an adult, and your relationship is like it's no longer determined by the neediness, or you living in separate houses, and they're just kind of like people
Yeah,
and it's funny to remind myself that my brothers are just such brilliant people, and I think I'm all right as well, and and now she's raising my daughter as well. She's just really good with she's a really good mother, and she's a really good grandmother, and I'm so lucky to you know have someone in my life like that who can take over for me, because I really love my career, and I wouldn't be able to give up being a mother if I couldn't trust the person who was taking care of her. And there's really nothing nobody better
yeah,
than a mother, or the grandmother of the child to take place of mother.
yeah. I think multi generational families are uh,
Underrated.
under. Yeah, yeah. We don't see them a lot anymore. We just throw our old people into homes now.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people that make the mistake of moving away from their hometown, they move away from their parents for job opportunities or whatever. And
Yeah,
I didn't, just out of coincidence, or was I happened to find a job that was quite close, and then I found a home that was quite close to my parents' home, and so we never left really. And so, uh, I mean, I've traveled the world. I've been really, really far away, but I ended up coming back. And
Where'd you go? The furthest?
I've been to Hong Kong for a research trip. I've traveled around
That's awesome.
Athens, Paris. I mean, Paris is very far away from here, but just going places.
That's cool. I've never left the United States. Like I don't even have a passport, which I need to fix soon. So anytime somebody tells me like they traveled the world, it's kind of, well, it's very foreign to me. No pun intended. But
Yeah, it's not a great time for travel right now.
no, no, I don't anticipate any travels. Probably not even in 2021, but hopefully soon. Hopefully that all clears
Yeah.
up. Um, but anyway, I think it's great. A lot of people are having babies and getting married, and it's just like actually. So since we've last talked, I've gone from atheist to Christian to now I'm engaged. So I'm going to be getting married in January.
Oh,
So lots of
congratulations.
updates on this end. Yeah, thanks. So 2020, like as awful as it's been, has also been really. I don't know. I feel bad to say it, but it's kind of one of my best years. So,
Okay. Well, I have a question for you then, since I'm wearing the blazer today.
oh
Uh,
sure.
in that talk with Paul Vanderclair, I think you probably saw the part where I think that was my favorite part of the interview. Is I asked him if he believes that I believe in God,
Mm.
and
Oh yeah. How did he respond?
he thinks that I do.
Yes.
It's a sort of matter of opinion. Um, I don't believe in God in the way many people would define it, but what he said to me is that if I want to be a Christian and if I want to believe in God, I just have to start acting like it, and it might come with time. And
Yeah.
I I had a problem with that because I've been so uh, committed to this idea of the truth, and only only acting and believing in things that I can sort of verify, and
Right.
not being cowardly, and just believing things that are convenient or intellectually satisfying. And I wanted to ask you how you came to coming to faith from this intellectual standpoint. I'm curious to see how it's possible because
Yeah.
I can't force myself to do it, and I don't even know if I would want to if I could. So explain to me, how did you take that little leap between Christianity is good and I'd like to be a Christian, and I fully believe in God, or
Okay.
however you describe it.
Well, firstly, like a lot of the way you're describing truth right now is exactly the way I was describing truth before I realized that that is God. Like when you say you care about the truth, you're not saying you care about things that are true. You're saying you care about like truth itself and like how you even measure if something is true. Like what's the thing up here that you can measure against so two plus two equals four and not five, right? And
Okay.
and for me, because I don't know if I told you this last time, but I had a Jordan Peterson study group here in North Carolina. I was running it for like 2.5 years. It's kind of died down now, but um, I was getting into arguments with fellow Jordan Peterson fans about the concept of truth itself. And I was like, well, if you take the sum of all facts that are true, that's truth itself or something like that, right? And a common a common response I'd get is like, no, that's just an abstraction. There's no such thing as truth itself. You're thinking of like a cup, a cup. Here's the example. Like when I look at, I'll use this can. When I use this can, I know that this is a can, but I also know it's the sum of all of its parts, right? Like there's a lot of things that make up this can. So I was just fascinated with that kind of relationship. And I thought, well, what's the sum of all things that are true? And I was stuck on that for a while. And one thing I found with Peterson people, whether they're atheist or Christian, is they all believe in an objective truth, right? And the thing that I kept getting caught on is, well, if there is one truth and we all live within it, then there has to be ways to honor. And when I say honor, I just mean to like harmonize with that truth that are better than others. And I think an obvious way to dishonor the truth is to lie, right? So if you know something is false and you say it anyway, you're not harmonizing with truth. You're actually deliberately doing the opposite. So I'm like, okay, well, if there are better ways to harmonize than others, then there's got to be like one way. I don't know it, but in any given moment, there's one way that would best harmonize. Like like the next word that comes out of my mouth or the next motion I do with my hand there's got to be like the perfect way to harmonize with truth. Like it's a big dance, and I just want to be in sync. So anyway, I have this. I won't say his name, but I have this one friend in the meetup group who's a Christian, and he's like, John, you keep saying this like there's one truth and maybe there's one way to the truth. He's like, have you read the Bible? And I'm like, yeah, but that's just like a fairy tale story thing. And Peterson, yes, he makes sense of it, but he also makes sense of Pinocchio. So Pinocchio's not scripture, so the Bible's probably not much different. Well, anyway, long story short, like the relationship between, he showed me how like the relationship between Christ and the Father, God the Father, is what I'm describing as kind of like the truth, and then the way to honor that truth, or the way to the truth. Like, how do you even know the truth, right? So there seemed to be some sort of parallel between what the Bible's saying through this story of Christ and what I'm noticing about objective reality. And then, of course, there's like other little things which I think because you're a Peterson fan and you've dealt with the James Damore thing. But like, I lived in San Francisco for many years, and in my 20s, I was actually trying to justify the idea that men and women are not different. That the only reason they're different is because, tyrannical men made it that way, right? So even something as silly, like I think that's silly now that I even believe that. But, getting back to the realization that actually men and women are different. Well, the Bible already says that. Okay, there's one objective truth and there's better ways to get to the truth than others. Well, the Bible already says that too, right? And he just kept showing me like more of these things that I'm noticing, or, maybe it's because of Peterson, maybe it's because of the various people I watch. And the Bible just kept surprising me over and over and over again. And I got to the point where I think Peterson was for a while, which is, I think in one of his interviews, he was just like, he has no problem with the Bible symbolically. Like, he thinks the Bible is probably the most true thing in the world symbolically. But he struggled with the metaphysics of the Bible, but largely because he struggled with the concept of metaphysics at all. And then he said the hardest would be like the physical resurrection. How do you get your brain to go, yeah, that happened? Because it's just so unlike anything you've ever seen or contemplated or whatever. But there was some point last year where I was like, I too struggle with the idea that Christ walked on water and died and then came back to life. But I'm going to choose to believe it because the Bible has surprised me enough times that I kind of regret not just believing the Bible 10 years ago. Because now I'm like, oh, the Bible agrees with me. That's kind of and it's like, I don't want to wait for the realization that the Bible agrees with me. I'm just going to kind of flip it around and agree with the Bible at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound stupid compared to what you just said, but it just reminds me of, I had the exact same realization, but not with the Bible. It was with my husband. And he, like, there was this time where I was so sure that I was right about something. And we got into this like big argument, and he's like, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, I couldn't comprehend it. I was like, there's no way I'm wrong about this. And then he proved that he was right. And it was like, I promised him, like, I'm just going to listen to you from now on.
Well, that's
always right about everything.
I hope that check wasn't completely blank. Like, you didn't write him a blank check because he's going to be wrong about some things. Unless you married Christ. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't always keep that promise because it is just so, the feeling of being certain about something is very convincing.
Yeah.
Until it's absolutely like right in front of your face in black and white, you'll pull all sorts of tricks to convince yourself that you were right all along.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't have anything more profound to say about that, but I think you're right. I mean,
but I think that's what faith is. Like, you're saying, I choose to have faith in my husband, and then, if things don't work out exactly the way you want, that's probably okay with you at this point. Is that?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we do our best all the time, but he's listening to this conversation, so I'm going to try to not talk him bad much. He's probably
that's okay.
Embarrassing him more. In this case, he's probably getting a bit big-headed. But the question about the Christianity, though, the I don't know what the services are like in whatever churches you go
Mm.
to, but the church that I was brought up in, that I went to the most, we have the in every Sunday in it's Church of England service, and the
Okay.
creed starts with um I can't even remember it, even though I said it about 100 times when I was this is more than 10 years ago. I believe in I believe in God the Son and God the Father, and I believe in the resurrection, and I believe He was risen on the third day, and
Yeah.
that you state in no uncertain terms these things that the rest of your belief system is supposed to be based on.
Right.
And I can say that I believe those things. I mean, I can engage with that story in a way that's very convincing and very inspiring. The story of Christ and the resurrection, and I think he has a lot of interesting things to say. But just like you said about Pinocchio, it's like I think it is just like to me, it just feels like a better version of Pinocchio.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, but it is just a story, and I can say I really like Pinocchio, but I would never say I believe that Pinocchio saved his father from the whale. It's like
Right.
I believe that that's a really interesting archetype, and we've got a lot of things to learn from that. But to say that I believe in it, I and the way that a lot of the other people in the church are saying it is like they're saying they believe it on a whole other level to what I believe,
Yeah, and I think they
and I
believe it on multiple levels, and they don't even
yeah
realize it because they could just tell the story. But I think implicit in them telling the gospel, they also understand kind of the relationship between knowledge and how we know knowledge. Like, but they don't articulate that like Jordan Peterson would.
yeah I think it's like the so to take another example of
Yeah.
a belief, the people in my family, obviously I can't look into their brain and know exactly what they mean when they say things, but they believe that the people they know who have died aren't gone forever, and they're going to be, and that when we die, we're going to see them in heaven. And it's not this isn't like a metaphorical like, oh, the memories will live on and the things they did are still with us in the way that you could uh, you know believe in an afterlife without believing in anything sort of supernatural.
Yeah.
They literally believe that we will meet, that the soul of me and the soul of my dead family, that we are going to meet and actually talk and be together in some,
Some way.
maybe not a physical sense, but in a real, a real actual interaction that we're going to have
Yeah.
in the afterlife.
See, I don't have a
And
hard time believing that, but I do have a hard time believing that it's gonna look like anything that I can imagine or that you can imagine. And
yeah,
then I think is the problem because they're saying the kinds of words that if you say them about here, like if I was like, oh, Poe's coming over and we're gonna meet, like we have an idea of what that looks like and feels like, and what that entails. But when I say, we're gonna die and we're gonna like meet again in this other sense, I think all we have is kind of this low resolution material version. So the best we can do is tell a story in a way that people understand. But I find when I talk to Christians, if you just say something like anytime somebody says like, oh, well, God came down and talked to Moses and said blank, right? You could say, yeah, but did he talk to him exactly the way we did, the way we talk to each other? Or is it possible that we don't really grasp the way God and Moses communicated? They'll go, oh yeah, it's not exactly a conversation like we're having over Zoom. Although, here's a thought. Try to explain to somebody from 1850 what this conversation on Zoom is like, right? They don't know what the internet is, they don't know what video is, they don't know anything. So it would be really, really hard. So I kind of just imagine it like that, where the idea that God talks to Moses isn't as simple as, he's got a boombox blasting his voice through the heavens. But
yeah,
yeah,
I get what you mean. I know that there's going to be people watching this who are like, atheists, like you and I were 2-3 years ago, whatever, sort of pre Jordan Peterson. There's no Sky Daddy. what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah, it's
flying
what
to the
Paul
gay
calls God
master.
too, basically, right?
Sure, sure. I just, there's still that part of my brain that I can't switch off that's going like, okay, but it's not, sometimes I just shake myself and go like, what am I saying? Like, I don't believe in God. Like this, I,
Yeah.
it goes back and forth with me. And I'm surprised when I talk to Christians, I'm often, when I seriously engage with Christians about their religion, they often say that for them it's the same, and they don't always, they don't always hear God. Like they don't,
Hmm.
their faith isn't as strong sometimes as others, and of course there's things that can make you doubt yourself. But it's, I know that it's what I'm feeling now could just be the sort of the low point of a uh, of an oscillating experience. I don't know
But
if that makes
you
sense. But
do you anticipate your whole life going like, oh, maybe this God thing's real? Nope. Maybe this God thing's real? Nope. Like,
yeah, I mean that's kind of what I'm like. But yeah, I mean on the God thing and just all of my beliefs, politically, I think that if I had to explain what I think the appeal of my YouTube channel is that I'm constantly doubting my own beliefs, my own political opinions, and I think that's probably my greatest strength as a commentator. Whatever I do on YouTube is that I don't allow myself to believe something unless I've attacked it as much as possible,
yeah.
and I. I think it would be nice if I could turn off that part of my brain so that I could believe in, because that's the part of my brain that initially took me out of church, was that
Oh
sort
yeah.
of.
Something you said to Paul that made, and I've heard other friends say, is like the church wasn't giving you the kind, it's not that you had a specific answer in mind, but you were expecting something more intellectually stimulating than what you were getting, and that just made you want to leave the church. Is that?
Yeah, yeah, I just felt like you're going to church because you want to have some spiritual guidance, and maybe this is transitioning to something that I also wanted to talk to you about, which is
Yep.
that you the religion is supposed to be a guiding principle for your life. I don't know if that's too much of a generalization, but I think,
It makes sense even if you tie that back into what I was saying earlier about how like if God is truth itself, then maybe it should be a guiding principle for your life, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think whether you're religious or not, I think dedicating yourself to being truthful and pursuing truth is definitely a
Yeah.
good way to get started if your life is in disarray.
Hmm.
Even if you decide to do that within religion or not. But the I think the church has a problem, and it comes back to what made me leave, which is that they aren't being prescriptive enough. So the
Hmm.
church has a lot of bad press, I suppose, over the hundreds of years that we've had Christianity. There's
Right.
been a lot of very harsh, judgmental, yeah, overly. John Peterson would call it what do you call it, an overdose of orderliness.
Hmm.
It's too tyrannical. That's what I'm looking for. Where they, fire and brimstone, and you must
Well,
dedicate this amount of your wages must go to the church and all that. And the sort of, I feel like now we've sort of overcorrected and gone in the other direction where church has become, obviously not every church, but I think the trend has gone towards being accepting, being tolerant
of
of different
everything.
behaviors, different people, and I can understand why they did that, but I think the result has been it's kind of watered down, and in an attempt to appeal to a wider group of people, they've managed to do the opposite. Where the you know Jordan Peterson, one of my favorite things that he ever said that sort of made me start paying attention to him initially was that he didn't expect young men of the modern day to find the idea of personal responsibility so appealing.
Yeah.
And he says it's like their eyes are lighting up whenever he
Yeah.
tells them to pick up the heaviest thing that they can manage and to carry it, and that will bring them meaning. And I feel like that's maybe this just my own personal thing, but I feel like that is the part of religion that is that they're trying to cut out, and that's what we need the most. Is this, you could be better. Telling people you're not fine the way you are. I mean, you deserve rights and all that, but we're all sinners.
Yeah.
And you could be doing better. And just because you're being harmless and you're not actively killing anyone, or you're not, just because you're not a bully, that doesn't mean you're good.
Right.
That doesn't mean you can be better. And that, I tried going to church, and it's just, there was nothing there for me to be inspired by. It was just very, God loves you, and it's great to love God. And maybe if I believed more, that would be comforting to me. Or maybe if I was looking for comfort, that would be a good place to start. But I have a pretty comfortable life, and what I want is what I'm looking for is sort of inspiration. I want I want someone to, I want someone like what Jordan Peterson's saying, which is, be brave, speak out, do more. Like, don't be afraid to say what you think is true. It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, so I'm lucky enough. My fiance, I just joined her in her church, and she's very picky about churches. And what I find, and what I find is, if you find a church or a person who says, "Oh, all churches are, pretty much the same. It's a place of worship." It's like, no. Some churches call themselves Christian, and they're not. They're reading from the Bible, but then they're reinterpreting it. They're doing all kinds of things that doesn't feel. First of all, it doesn't feel philosophical, let alone honest to what they're even saying they're doing, which is preaching from that Bible. Without even going into examples, like I just wanted to say that the church I'm going to, will offend people. There will be people who go to that church, and they're going to be told things like, "Hey, God made Eve as man's helper," right? But he'll also take the other side of it and go, "But that's not an insult. God calls himself man's helper." So what he's saying is that man needs God and man needs a woman. It's a really interesting approach, but he reads from the scripture. He tries to pick it apart. He tells stories. He gives you application for how you can see this in your own life and how you can start using it immediately. Actually, we're seeing our pastor for premarital counseling soon. And I hope I don't get him in trouble, but he says, it's a shame that we even need premarital counseling. He thinks that's something that parents should be doing throughout your life, that your church should be doing every Sunday. And I'll say my pastor does a good job of every Sunday. It feels like, to me at least, maybe it's because marriage is on my mind, but it seems like there's some sort of lesson about marriage. And if you believe in the Bible and you understand the relationship between Christ and the church, it's kind of hard to go to a church and worship Christ and not have some sort of talk about marriage, right? But what you just said, a lot of churches feel like it's empty. It's just, God loves you, you're perfect the way you are, blah, blah, blah. Have you heard of Allie Beth Stuckey, by the way? She's a Christian. You've heard of Lauren Chen, Roaming Millennial? Okay. She told me about Allie Beth, and she's got a book out. It's called "You're Not Enough, and That's Okay." So it seems like you might be on that wavelength too, from some of what you just said. If you want to check it out,
I'm kind of curious about your premarital counseling, because just like
me too.
you. I mean, I don't want to turn anyone off marriage, or you least of all, since you're not even married yet. But it's I mean, it's so true. Is that I think maybe our lives are too easy in modern times, but it feels like your marriage is it's simultaneously the biggest cause of conflict in your life and the biggest comfort as well if you get
Mm.
it right. And I use it every way. I don't know if you ever see this, but it's really not very hard to find a married couple who obviously hate each other, and it's
Yeah.
even easier to find a divorced couple. And you
Yep.
just you see these people and you're like, how did this happen?
Right.
These people, they started off and they loved each other and they had you assume they had every chance to have a good marriage, and yet it seems like it's rarer than it is common to have either a bad marriage or a divorce these days.
Mm.
And I think that is a kind of moral failing of modern times, where we have failed to bring marriage into modern times and really figure out, like, how do you live with the same person for the rest of your life, and how do
Yeah.
you take care of them and let them take care of you, and how do you make each day good so that you want to stick around.
Right.
And I think that's probably no better example of a place where people could be benefiting from religion, where if there's one thing that hasn't changed much over the millennia that humans have existed together, it is man and woman trying to make it work together and raise children. Like, there's
Yeah.
really, it's different now in the sense that superficially we've got different clothes, we live in different buildings, and
Right.
the family structure is a bit different, and we don't have as many children as we used to. But
It's a
I think
shame.
on a very deep level, the ancients had the same arguments with their wives as we do now. And you can say it's different with now we have divorce, and now we have uh, what do you call it, family planning, contraception, and
Right.
we can have all sorts of operations and things, and women are working outside of the house, and it's changed on. People think it's a really huge change, but to me, I think those things are just sort of superficial changes,
Mm-hmm.
and two people living together who are like quite, men and women are quite different in ways that you can reliably sort of track. And
Yeah.
I think the ancients have a lot of wisdom to tell us about that. Is what I guess that's the bottom line I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And obviously I can't speak with wisdom to marriage because I'm not married yet. But the thing that pops up in my head because there are a lot of people getting divorced now, and I'm curious what the stats are though of like Christians getting divorced. Like if you narrowed it down to just Christians, and then if you actually narrowed that down into different denominations, right? I'd be really interested to see which ones disproportionately work.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, take the Ben Shapiro approach, and it's just like do what they're doing, and you'll find success.
Well, I think that's I don't know specifically what you're referring to as Ben Shapiro, but that sounds, there's something sensible there, where you just look at the people who are doing it well and just see what they're doing. But something that Paul Vanderplay kind of surprised me with was his he was so ready to tell me that Christians really aren't much better than everyone else on average. There's a lot of sinners going to church, and they're not always practicing what they preach, or what they just because they're going to church doesn't mean they have the moral fortitude to go through with what they believe they should do. And I can't remember what I was going to say. But the divorce statistics are interesting, and I don't know if you've been. It's kind of weird because when I first made that James Moore video 3 years ago, I got some comments on that because it was sort of an anti-feminist video. I got some comments on that video about MGTOW, men going their own way. I think people in YouTube, we've all sort of heard of that. So then I started looking into it. A few months later, I made a video about it, and that video is still getting views. And the dislike ratio on that is only ever growing, because the people who are watching it now are all the MGTOW going like, dumb woman says she doesn't like MGTOW.
You didn't like, you thought, I'd have to watch that video again, but what was in summary, the thesis?
I think people who want to get married should get married. It's like, if you
Yes.
don't want to get married, then don't. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think these guys would make good husbands. They certainly don't seem to be, very up for it. And I think if you're not into the idea of marriage, then yeah, any whatever woman you're with is, she should be glad to be clear of you.
Right.
Uh,
Like you just kind of like shrunk the size of the pool for her to pick from, which is good because
yeah,
you probably shouldn't be in it if, you know.
well, whatever. I just think, yeah, I guess I was a little bit insulted that a lot of these men were quite insulting. They were quite contemptuous, sorry, of married men. Calling them simps or whatever. That, oh, you're dumb to get married. Haven't you
Yeah,
heard
that's
about the,
silly.
whatever. I'd only just got married, actually. I didn't mention that in the video, but it was only like 6 months before that I got married. So I
Okay.
was a bit, I guess you could say I took umbrage with the idea that these guys were calling basically my husband, calling him an idiot, calling him a simp, and when he's really nothing of the sort.
I honestly think of
Yeah.
MGTOW as like male. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to think of where I was going with that story. Male
Uh,
feminist, is that what you were going to say?
yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's like I don't need no woman, and and
Yeah.
I think it's terrible advice. I mean, you know, I don't care if you're MGTOW, a feminist, you're promoting gay adoption, whatever it is. It's like the fact is every single human being on this earth comes from one man and one woman, and it seems that when they have their mother and father around, they do a lot better. And when they don't, they spend their entire life trying to fill that gap that they lost through, like, sometimes it's just a dead parent or something, and adoption is a great kind of fix for that. But other times it's like a deadbeat dad, and then, mom raises the kid on their own, and their whole life they spend angry at God or something because, they're angry at their dad, and it's the closest thing they could think of. And it's just like you can see this happening over and over again in everyone's lives and everyone's stories. Why would you conclude then that the thing you should do is, from the MGTOW perspective, stay away from women? Maybe sleep with them here and there, get your rocks off, but don't settle down with one. She's just gonna milk you dry, is kind of their message, and it's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be realistic, some people are beyond saving, and the best thing they can do is to separate themselves from people they could potentially hurt. So I don't think MGTOW is such a bad thing. Like you said, I think they're probably doing the right thing by, these men who, if you hate women, and I know they like to say they're not misogynist, and they're not all of them aren't, obviously, but if you really don't like the idea of settling down with a woman or making sacrifices for a woman, if that makes you uncomfortable, the idea that you might have to give up some of yourself for your relationship, then I don't think you're going to be a very good partner. And
Right.
I think, like I said, I think the world is probably better clear of you, and you'd probably be a happier person if you try to find some, inner some inner peace on your own. And maybe if you, grow as a person, you might one day be ready for, to shack up with someone who's just as fucked up as you are.
Yeah. See,
It's
this is one of the things in the Bible that I find beautiful, actually, is the idea that a man is called to love his wife no matter what. So even when she's being a little terrible, you love her anyway. And I think I don't know if this was the point he made or if it was the point he was trying to make. But when Paul asked you if your daughter loves you, you're like, no. but like, you love your daughter and she could do nothing for you, right? And you probably don't even love her because, like, you're thinking like, oh well, in 10 years she can mow the lawn or something. Like, your love for her is just unconditional. And even when she is a big inconvenience to you, and it's like, according to the Bible, that's the way Christ loves the church, and that's the way a man needs to love his wife. And we're going to struggle with it, but we need to do it. But on the flip side, women need to respect their husbands, and sometimes that means even when he's being a little terrible, respect him anyway. And it's like, and I think for me, when I'm like reading through that and thinking about it, what's beautiful is how I can see how if I just flood my fiance with love, it it kind of compels her to respect me even when I'm not at my best. And when she just floods me with respect, it compels me to love her even when she's not at her best. So it's almost like the Bible, it knows that there's a way to create this perpetual machine in your marriage. And it's husband, love your wife, woman, respect your husband. And I don't know, I've been just trying to do that a lot. I mean, I'm not married yet, but I don't think that starts at marriage.
That's good. It's good advice. I think it's the real tragedy is when the opposite happens, and you can see this with couples who are fighting, even if they're not married yet, and they what it looks like happens is that one person or both of them probably have built up an expectation of how they think the other person will act, where it's negative. So they go, well, if my husband makes me a cup of tea, for instance, and that makes me happy, and the fact that he's able to make me happy makes him happy. Yeah, it's a whole British thing. We love tea.
Yes.
And, making someone a cup of tea is like giving them a hug.
Yeah.
It makes everyone feel good. But the opposite thing is, well, if I'm mad at him, I'm gonna think, well, I'm not gonna make him a cup of tea because he's ungrateful, and he's not gonna say thank you, and he's I won't even bother. And then he's thinking, what, she's gonna make herself a cup of tea, she's not making me one. Like, she's so selfish. The expectation you have for the other person not reciprocating, or doing chores or whatever, it just like you're describing, the perpetual motion, it just builds up. And people say the marriage isn't 50-50, it's 100-100. You've heard that? It's kind of cheesy, right?
No, but I like it. It paints the picture quickly.
You've got to put in 100%, even when you think the other person isn't pulling their weight.
It's true. And I mean, just imagine, that scenario that you just painted, like you're kind of mad at your husband for something, and let's say he knows that, but you still bring him tea. Just imagine, like, everybody knows the next step in that story. There's like a hug and a, hey, I'm sorry. There's something about loving anyway, even though I'm mad at you, that makes the other person, it kind of brings it back to neutral so that you can go the other direction.
Yeah, I think that's it is kind of beautiful, the little soap opera of life, where you're really mad at someone, and just if you force yourself to do something nice, it actually makes you feel better even before they've reciprocated. Because it just gives you a better opinion of yourself. And I think everyone wants to be good. If you give someone an opportunity to do something good, or to be generous, in a way that's not too difficult, it actually makes them like you more. If they say if you want to get to know your neighbors, you should ask them for a favor.
Yeah.
Like, don't ask them to pick you up from the airport, but just
a small one.
Yeah, they'll go like, oh, I'm a good person. I lend that person some sugar or whatever.
What's funny is, in myself, I've noticed this kind of paradox where I know things like that are great. Like asking somebody for a small favor gives them an opportunity to do a good deed. Like there's so much niceness to that. But I've read enough things like, I don't know if you've heard of the Benjamin Franklin effect or the Ben Franklin effect. I
thought that he said something like that, though, didn't he?
Yeah, like if somebody does a favor for you once, they're likely to do a favor again.
Yeah, okay.
And then on the flip side, if someone hurts you once, they're likely to hurt you again. But that idea, that concept has been used to kind of manipulate people. And cults will use this kind of thing. When you first join some sort of company or religious thing, right? And what do? They start you small. They ask you to like help out with something that costs you nothing, like very little effort, but you did the favor. And they use it to kind of, and it just feels so self-serving that I find myself, I get caught up not doing the kinds of things that might actually be good for relationships because I'm afraid that it'll come off as manipulative. It's very interesting. Okay. Yeah.
That is, I don't have any advice for that.
No, well, because, you said if you ask somebody for a favor and it's like, but then I feel bad that I asked them for a favor. So how do you reconcile that? How do you land on asking them versus not burdening them?
I try not to overthink it, to be honest. If I need something from someone, I'll ask for it. If I don't think it's too much of an inconvenience, if I really don't think they mind, I'll ask for it. and if I think that somebody deserves, if I'm if I, what's the word? If I feel grateful for something someone's done, I'll thank them.
Yeah.
And I just try not to think about it, because you can get yourself tied in knots, wondering how you're coming off, and wondering, if the, I think the thing is that people don't care about you nearly as much as you do. Outside of your
True.
outside of your like direct family, most people just aren't thinking about you that much.
Right.
And that as soon as you walked out of the room, they've probably forgotten about you.
Probably, yeah.
So
Unless you're
I don't think
Trump,
you have to worry.
apparently.
Oh well, yeah, well, yeah. Well, I think he's got a very hard job for that reason. Having
Yes.
a lot of people,
Thinking
a
about
lot
him
of
all the
people care
time.
about you that much. That's probably the nice way of putting it. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
true.
I
They're
think,
probably thinking about themselves, quite honestly. They're
yeah,
probably like, it's so funny where like I'm sitting there like, oh man, did I come off strange? They're probably thinking the same thing.
yeah. They're just thinking about themselves, honestly.
Yeah, that's funny.
They're going like, "Oh man, I hope it didn't smell that fart I did."
uh,
And
that
you're worrying about like whether your hair looked dorky or not.
right, right. Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that.
There's so much of social interaction is just overthinking it, and some of the most likable people I've known come off as being completely oblivious. Like they're just telling whatever stories they want. They're not thinking about like, am I talking too much? Is this an
yeah,
appropriate time for this? And they just seem to be having fun. And but I guess it's, you're not asking about. I know you weren't asking about how to be charismatic and likable. You were asking about how to be a good person, I guess. But
well, no, actually, I
I
was. This is funny because one of the things I wrote down to ask you was for some advice on how to feel comfortable just talking in front of a camera by yourself. So it's kind of weird that we landed here without me asking that.
Oh wow. Have you seen Charisma on Command?
Yes,
It's
I
a
love
YouTube
that guy.
channel. Yeah, yeah. I think I think he's a bit of a snake oil salesman. I think because
Yeah.
he comes across as so likable and cool. I don't actually think it's that easy to change that much about yourself. You have to
Hmm.
force yourself to become more comfortable just by like hacking it. He kind of
Yeah.
sells the idea that you could hack your own behavior to be to make people like you, and that might be true if you have some bad habits that you need to teach yourself to stop doing. That might help, but really, I think confidence, it comes from, well, I don't want to pretend like I know, but since you asked, it's just kind of a combination of getting getting experience, but like positive experience, where it's reinforced by your belief that people like you will make them like you more.
Hmm.
That if you feel like you're coming off well, it makes you feel confident, and you can just keep talking. And I used to worry so much about, am I talking too much? Is this interesting? And I think it just, you see the people who are really successful on YouTube,
Yeah.
and they are they are not thinking about that.
Right. They all
They
talk
are,
too much.
yeah. I think I was looking at the, I don't know what to call him, a YouTuber, the personality Vaush or Vorsh.
Well, yeah, I've heard his name in the past, but I watched the Tim Pool interview. If that's,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, I someone on Twitter said that Vosh's superpower is confidently asserting things that are blatantly false, and you can get so far in life by
That's,
doing that. You just
yeah.
you just assert it as if it's true, and
But with
about
so much confidence.
at least 10% of the people listening will go like, "Huh, really? Is that true?" He can't just say it's that I heard an interesting quote from Adolf Hitler, of all people, in in Mein Kampf. He describes this phenomenon known as the big lie,
Hmm.
where he says that most people in their day-to-day lives, they tell little lies,
Right.
and they just try to sneak something past whoever they're talking to, and they people use lying in that way just to cover up um little things they want to hide. So nobody's expecting you to tell them a big lie. They're
Yeah.
they expect they have a little simulation of you running in their head, where they're thinking, how would I act if I was being this guy? That's how we kind of make expectations for other people. So they would never expect you to tell a big lie.
Right.
They're expecting you to tell little lies. And so if you confidently assert something like, oh, the Earth is flat. Maybe that's not a good example. But
Yeah, and there's too much. It's too loaded, that one.
yeah, I don't want to. What if I told you that Saturn is bigger than Jupiter?
Yeah.
A lot of people will tell you that Jupiter is bigger, but those guys are idiots. Seriously,
Right.
I can say, well, maybe if you count the, I'll tell you some little little trick of, well, it's heavier, it's not bigger.
Right.
Saturn is bigger, Jupiter is heavier. That's why it's like, it really doesn't take much. I think they might not believe it, but they
believe like your sincerity.
They'll shift their idea of it like 10%. They'll go, well, maybe, like, is it? You'll make them think again.
Yeah, that's funny, because sometimes when I try to make jokes, like, part of a good joke is to just be really absurd. Like, it's so obviously not true that it's funny, but sometimes people believe it. Like, I have an arm that's shorter than the other because of something that happened when I was an infant. I had an infection. But anyway, there's scars up and down my arm. And when people ask about it, I'll get all serious faced and I'll mention a shark, like a shark attack. And I'm thinking it's just so absurd that it's not true, but they get all like uncomfortable, because I think, to your point, they're not expecting me to give them such a big lie, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's one of those, maybe that lie is just not big enough. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a funny one. I mean, people do get attacked by sharks, but I mean, it's very rare.
But have you ever met one? I haven't.
Well, maybe that guy was lying to me, but I do actually. I knew a guy who was a surfer, and I said, "Aren't you afraid of sharks?" And he said, "Yeah, shark bit me twice."
Oh wow!
Like obviously he didn't die or whatever. He's like, I think he said that there was like, he didn't get bitten by a shark, but he saw a shark that was like coming for him or something.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it, like, if you're a surfer, I think it does happen.
Yeah, that makes.
Yeah, if you surf in the wrong place, maybe you should try something else. See if other people will believe it.
Just tell them that like aliens abducted me or something. Like, how absurd does it have to be before it's like? But no, the big lie thing. I've heard the big lie referenced. I didn't realize it was Hitler.
Yeah, they're referencing Hitler.
Yeah, but like Orwell kind of captures that with the 2 + 2 = 5, I think, because.
Yeah, I think that's a bit different, but.
Oh, it's how so? I'm curious.
Well, the 2 + 2 = 5 is, it's kind of degrading you by forcing you to believe something you know isn't true.
Okay.
So my favorite example of the 2 + 2 = 5. It's not real. It's an episode of Star Trek where Captain Picard he's been captured and he's being tortured. They're trying to get information out of him, and they show him 4 lights on the wall, and they try to get him to say that there are 5 lights, so that if you can get someone to say something they know is a lie, if you can get them to believe that their own brain is faulty,
right,
then you can get them to do anything. And it's it's a psychological trick, and it's an emotional manipulation. Making them, it's the gaslight, making them doubt themselves so much that they'll believe you. I think the big lie is more of a you really do believe it, because our perception. It's kind of like the you heard of that experiment where where people walk into a lift or an elevator, as Americans call it, and they're facing the wrong way.
Yeah.
They're facing the back wall.
Yeah, and then you walk in and you're like, and then you wind up facing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's like one person, then you'll think that guy's an idiot, and I'm not going to do that. But if there's enough people in there facing the wrong way, then you're going to start feeling like you're wrong, because that's just the human reaction, is to believe. It's like we think that we're so great with our logic and our, like, I believe things that are true, but really people are so herd mentality. It's you and I made this video recently about how you determine who's the smartest person to listen to, because that is actually the most effective way of learning, is to find someone who is legitimately smarter than you and to listen to them. It's actually a lot quicker to do that than it is to do your own research and to read read studies or try to figure everything out from first principles.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
and
even then, it's kind of like what Peterson and I guess Paul was advising to you. It's like even then, what you're doing is you're believing them and then acting it out as though it is true, and then affirming it. You're not like you don't affirm it before you act it out. Is that fair?
yeah, I guess so. But the coming back to the big lie, I think I don't know if you ever watched Scott Adams,
Mm-hmm.
the Dilbert comic
Yeah,
artist.
I watch him quite a lot.
Yeah, he's good, isn't he? I haven't watched him for a while, but something he said that I thought was really interesting was that um, we don't actually have a category for things that are false and things that are true. What we have is a how much do I believe it, or how likely is it to be true?
Yes.
So we have beliefs that are I'm pretty sure this is true, and I'm pretty sure this isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that what the big lie does is it shoves your this is true meter up just a little bit.
Right.
And it just goes like, I think, 99% of the people I've met say that this is the case or whatever. But this guy says it's that those guys are all full of shit.
Right.
And so like, it creeps up like it's like, it was crazy because I felt it happening to myself when I was watching Alex Jones on Joe Rogan.
Just the other day?
No, well, actually, no. I know he was on there the other day, but it was like longer ago than that. And just the fact that he wasn't being like a really crazy manic dude. He was just being like a bit more chilled out than normal.
Yeah.
And he was just saying like, "Oh yeah, everyone lies about me," and I was like, the thing about the turning the freaking frogs gay. I'm like, well, obviously he's wrong. But is there a little bit of truth is what he's saying? Because it sounds like he's
the frogs were apparently they were like reversing genders or something. Something was happening with the frogs.
Well, Jurassic Park is based on this idea that they started making. I mean, it's science fiction, but the plot of Jurassic Park is that the frog DNA that they took and put into the dinosaurs.
Yeah, like the frogs were
making some of the dinosaurs female so that they could reproduce. And I learned from that. I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
But from reading that novel, the novel of Jurassic Park, I learned, I think, that frogs can change their biological sex to female. If there are no females in the population, they'll make some.
But is that would that not be an indicator of? Somebody put it to me, if you find yourself in a random spot, like you get dropped off in the middle of some big continent and you want to know if the land is healthy, look for frogs. And it's like, if there are frogs and, they're living and they're, it's like probably a good place to settle down. But in this place, I don't know the full story behind the frogs is gay thing, but I've had friends try to tell me that although what he said wasn't literally true, it's one of those things where it's at least metaphorically true. Like if you acted as though it was true, you might actually address the issue, because apparently something was spilling into the water and it was creating a bad environment for everybody, and the frogs had to adapt. And it's like, hey, maybe we should pay attention to that. And if somebody like Alex Jones needs to say the frogs are gay for anybody to look at it, I'm not so upset.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I could feel myself being convinced by Alex Jones, and it was like a very uncomfortable feeling, because I know that Alex Jones is insane, and I've seen it. But then him just acting like a normal person for 5 minutes and confident, like I said before about Bausch, confidently asserting things, and suddenly I was like, like not fully convinced, but like I'm 5% agreeing with him more than I was before.
Yeah,
and I think it's really powerful, But I think you got to watch out for people who are charismatic, because they have so much power. Not to change all your opinions overnight, but just chip away at your what you know.
Yeah.
And if they're telling you something that's true, then that's good. Yeah, that's like what's called being red pilled.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to a lot of people watching Jordan Peterson, and then watching Paul Van der Klee or whatever. It's like these charismatic guys who are chipping away at that like percentage. I think this guy knows what he's
So if there's a big lie on this side, there's a big truth on this side that they're offering.
You just don't. I mean, the fact is, we don't know what is what is the big lie and what is the big truth, because everyone, people who are telling you the big lie, they often believe it themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think we
Yeah.
can know a lot of them by acting them out, and like, you know, and that's the thing. Okay, so I do want to bring this up because, and not to turn it into a Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson kind of conversation, but you know, because you had said a few things. One, that we don't actually know anything that's true. We just kind of improve its credibility, right? Even science tries to falsify it and fails, and then we're like, okay, it's true, right? Um, I have this idea that truth, that there's at least two categories of truth. Um, and one of those categories are the ones that modern man seems to be obsessed with, which is the truth that allows us to predict and to control the environment around us, right? But then there's this other like kind of truth that you can't actually predict or control with, but you know it's true. It's like you're an artist, right? So to a degree, you've talked about drawing and animations and things.
Yeah, I mean, I draw.
Is there like a certain way, like a certain environment you can set up for yourself that you know that if you take a shower and like put on some good music, sit down in a certain desk on a certain chair, you know that your creative juices will work better?
Oh man,
Is there
I wish
anything?
you picked a better example. I mean, the only thing that reliably makes me draw well is if I have something, but if I have something else I'm supposed to be doing,
Well, there you go.
you know.
But some people have they have some sort of ritual they do, and they know it works. It doesn't always work, but they know it works enough that they do it, and it can't predict. Like they don't know what song they're going to write, they don't know what drawing they're going to draw, but they know they're going to write a song or that they're going to draw something. And it's like the fact that I can't predict the outcome with that doesn't make it less true, right? And I wonder to what extent, when people knock things like prayer, really what they're saying is, I reject all truth that don't let me control the outcome. Um,
Mm.
and it would make sense to me that some truths that we wouldn't be able to measure because, like, the fact that we can measure anything at all is a miracle. The fact that the world is so ordered that we can rely on it to act the way we expect it to is really cool. But then how do you measure whatever makes that happen to begin with, right? Like it's like how does a ruler measure itself, to borrow some of the
Mm.
language from Paul. The ruler is in relation to something else, and then that's in relation to something else. Once you get up to whatever the source is, which I think the laws of physics, like I don't know. I guess to put it in the form of a question, do you also seem to see this relationship between the truths that we can measure and that whichever allows that to happen?
Oh
I don't
God,
even know if that's a well-formed question.
that's, I think that's too hard for me. I It comes back to a question that I used to ask myself when I was a kid. Is like I wondered to myself how the first ruler was made,
Yeah.
because to draw a straight line, the only way I know how to do that is to get a ruler and run your pencil along it.
Mm.
But then how did they come up with the first straight line to make that ruler?
Yeah.
And the centimeters or inches that are delineated there, how do they, what are they measuring off? And the thing that was, what was that measured off?
Right.
And the I don't think I can answer your metaphysical question, but I think it is kind of interesting the way that, when if you're going down this metaphor of the scientific measurement thing,
Mm-hmm.
the unit of a kilogram, which is then used to give us a lot of other measurements, like a Newton and the a lot of our units come from the kilogram as a standard. I don't know about Americans, but the a kilogram is it's not a it's not a theoretical thing.
Yeah.
It's a block of platinum that's sitting in a vault in Zurich, and that is not something that weighs a kilogram. That is the definition of a kilogram. Is this is this block that sits in a vault,
Yeah.
and they calibrate, or every other thing that measures weight is calibrated eventually back up to this 1 kilogram.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing that calibrates everything else.
And now we're trusting that over the course of 1,000 years, some of those particles don't disappear somehow, right? Because that would.
Well, look, the thing is that if they did, then that it's not that it would then be incorrect, but we'd have to change everything to fit that.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying if so, then because not everybody has access to that block, somebody else might have like some sort of weight from 100 years ago that was a kilogram, and to the extent that they're measuring across that, you're going to get cumulative errors over time, and then a kilogram in 1,000 years is going to be lighter than a kilogram, right? And now once you start trying to do things across time, so we are really relying on the fact that that thing of lead never changes, and also they don't change the altitude either, right? Because technically the pull of gravity could be a little different.
Yeah, it's actually you said it's platinum. It's because the reason it's platinum is because that is the least reactive. What do you call it? It's the least reactive mineral, the element.
Okay.
So it no matter. It's not that it doesn't react at all. Like you say, it will eventually, a few atoms here, a few atoms there, added, taken away. The idea is, I don't know if they keep it in a vacuum chamber or whatever, but
couldn't they also just every 100 years or so get another block of platinum and make sure it weighs the same? And I don't know.
Well, it's like, well, how would you tell? It's like the more you think about it, it's a real a mind deaf. Sorry, I know you're Christian. I feel like I shouldn't swear at the stream, but so someone I was just reading your chat. I'm glad I did.
Oh, I'm not even on there.
This guy says that the weight is based on the Planck constant now, which is it's not a measurement. It's like a physical fact. I remember it from my A level in physics. It's a non-disputable. I can't even remember what it is. It's the amount of energy that's created from a certain something. This guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about, so maybe he's about to tell us. But he says that we're no longer on the platinum standard.
Yeah, he might have looked it up just now.
Anyway, it doesn't change what I'm saying. One of the hardest things one of the hardest things to learn as an engineer is that the drawings that you make to like how to manufacture something. You can say, I'll just use this as an example. Say, John, I want you to make this mug, and I want it to be this height and this diameter.
Okay.
And I need it to be, this diameter at the top and this diameter at the bottom. And you can say, yeah, I'm going to make that, but it doesn't actually mean anything if I don't give you a tolerance on that. So I can tell you it needs to be this width, but actually it's impossible to make it that width. What I need to tell you is it needs to be between 68 and 69 millimeters.
Oh,
or it
wow.
needs to be between 68.1 and 68.2. I can be really precise, but the actual definition of a length
is
in
impossible.
A manufacturing sense, in a real sense, it's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all you can do is to get it within and there's like within a probability. What do you call it? Frequency.
Yeah, and if you did just tell me 61, then I would have to just say somewhere around 60.5 and 61.5, right?
Yeah, well, you could make it, and then I'd go, John, this is 61.1. What do you?
Yeah,
I told you to make it 61.
Yeah,
and that's my fault for not defining it, or maybe it's your fault for not asking. And
no, but it's a good point.
I don't know how to answer your philosophical question, but that's what came to mind, and there is something kind of magical about that. When I first learned that, because you go to university and they teach you how to do a drawing, and they say, okay, you dimension from here to here and here to here, and these are the views you do, and you kind of imagine that you're designing something with a certain dimension. You imagine that the thing you're designing is this size, but actually, when you make something, it won't be the drawing. What's that a Latin phrase that the map is not the territory?
Oh, I've heard something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but
It's really
see,
famous. It's pretty famous. I don't remember now,
but
but
that's
that's
exactly the point. Like, there's also
yeah.
the famous pipe, and then it says in Latin, "This is not a pipe," because it's not. It's a painting of a pipe.
In French. It's
Oh,
yeah,
is it
the
French?
post
Oh, I
on
thought it was Latin.
yeah.
but like,
Sicily.
but that's kind of my point too. Like, and I don't know if you got to look at that book that I sent you the
Oh
preview
yeah.
of on Amazon. Did you look at that at all by
I
chance?
looked at you told me to look at the diagrams, and I did look at the diagrams, and that was a couple of weeks ago now, and I've forgotten what I saw. But yeah, I didn't. I had a look.
Yeah.
I pressed the look inside button, and I had a look
Well,
inside.
reading some of him and listening to his brother, that author, so Matthew
Yeah,
Peugeot and then Jonathan Peugeot, and then even listening and talking to Paul on Twitter a little bit, like what I think is the case is that we don't actually know the truth. Like we are incapable of knowing truth.
yeah,
We only know, we don't even know the material world around us because how do we interact with it? It like comes through our eyeballs, our ears, and then our brain has to process it. So everything we know is a symbol. And this thing that I'm working through in my mind is if everything we know to be true is through some sort of symbol, right? And on the other side of that symbol is some like fundamental fact about the universe. It makes sense why, like science, we'd be able to completely with our own minds map from our brains to some real truth about the universe just by using words and language and rulers and measurements and things like that, right? And we think that that's us doing it because we're like we have reason. It seems to me that for the sets of truth where we cannot measure ourselves, or at least especially as an individual, the symbol that we have to follow to get to the truth, I don't know how else to put it except this, that some symbols suck and the gap between the symbol and the truth is very large. And then some symbols are really good where the gap between the symbol and the truth is really small. And I think ancient humans did that, right? Hieroglyphics, if they wanted to say bird, they drew a bird. We complicate things. We have 4 letters. You have to know what the B, and then each of those letters is made up of like many marks. It's like really hard. But somehow we can still read that 4-letter word bird and we know what it means. We know what it sounds like. We know what it feels like when it, flies over us. My thought with Christ is the symbol where the gap between it and what it represents is 0. So I'm not saying Jesus Christ the man, right? Because even that's like Christ in man form, which is less than Christ in a way.
okay.
But if you can imagine these hierarchy of symbols for things, right? It seems that whatever would be at the top of that hierarchy is important, and that you should seek that because that's how you know all the other stuff to even be useful.
Like the platinum in Zurich.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems that the Christ story, and I think Paul called it kind of a compass for all the other stories, follows that same pattern. The Christ story seems to be the story that if you put every story in like this hierarchy, it seems to be the one that like the relationship between it and what it's trying to say is basically 0. And I find the more I read the Bible, it's amazing how much the Bible references itself, which I would kind of expect. I don't know. Do you know Ayn Rand at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to. How much time do you have?
I love that. We're having a conversation.
No, I mean, I don't mean to say that I'm going to
that?
talk to you for the next hour. I also just want to be careful with your time, and if I have to summarize things, I can.
Let's say I have another 35 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I won't take 35 minutes. If you told me you had to go now, I would say goodbye. Okay. So Ayn Rand's...
You seriously got my expectations up for whatever you're about to say because
well,
someone genuinely saying how much time do you have makes you like think they're going to say something really interesting.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint. Don't get your expectations too high because what I'm about to say really bothers both Christians and objectivists. They both hate me for what I'm about to say, but there's something I think there's something to it. So Ayn Rand's uh, philosophy of objectivism, right?
Yeah, roughly.
She claims, and I know most of her philosophy through her interviews, not her writing. I like to listen to people. It's a lot better than
Yeah.
reading. But she claims that her only presupposition is existence exists.
A is A.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, I think A is different than existence exists. And I think she doesn't realize that. And that's where I actually want to talk about,
Okay.
because
I only said A is A because I've heard Leonard Peikoff, her student, saying A is A as he says it a lot.
yeah. Yeah. And I listened to, who's that other guy? He's got a bit of a speech.
Yaron Brook.
Yes. I think he represents objectivism very, very well. Like, I don't agree with it 100%, but I'm trying to make a case for it and then make the smallest tweak I can to justify Christianity. And here's what I think it is. Existence exists is not A equals A. If you listen to what Ayn Rand says, she says that, first of all, she says she has no faith. She only has convictions, right? And the first conviction is that existence exists. She says that, but then the minute, she derives her whole reason for capitalism through that. The minute somebody says, well, if that's the case and existence exists and everybody should be self-interested and blah, 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 then what's stopping me from just lying to you so that, I tell you I have this apple, and this apple, if you plant it, is going to plant golden apples. And then you believe me and you give me $1 million for that apple, because $1 million is nothing compared to what it's going to produce for you. She says, oh, no. In my philosophy, you can't lie. You always have to tell the truth. And because if you truly believe that existence exists, you would want to honor it, et cetera, et cetera. So although she says her first presupposition is that existence exists, it seems her first presupposition is that truth matters or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Which is a moral claim. So I'm trying to have a conversation. I want to find like Yaron, whatever his name is, and run this by him, because I don't think it's fair to say her first conviction is that existence exists if every time you start bringing up the ways that can justify lying, she's like, no, you can't lie. It's like, okay, well, then that's your first presupposition. Secondly, existence, the noun, is very different than exist. We use the same word in English. I want to look at other languages. But I think there's a relationship between this can, which exists, and existence itself. This can exists because of existence, right? I don't think existence exists at all. I think existence is kind of that which allows things to exist, right? And if that's the case, that maps perfectly to the creator God, right? God is that which allows everything else to be. So I'm trying to take some of these really intellectually stimulating philosophies they are intellectually stimulating to me, and just seeing like, where's that little gap where they're like some reason jumping over God. And with Ayn Rand, I think I found it quickly, which is just she, for some reason, has established, and her conviction is that if you start with existence exists, you too would always want to tell the truth. I don't know. I don't know how to end that, but the point is that I think she's right, and a lot of Christians write her off, which I think is a mistake. And I think Christians are right, but a lot of people who are Randian, objective, she didn't like the term Randian, actually. They write Christians off, but they're saying so much of the same thing, in my view.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how to. What I like to tell people, I'm kind of happy with. I say it gleefully, is that I got what was it now? I think I got an E, or I failed philosophy basically.
What's an E? I think we had the same problem last time.
An E is above an F, so it's like I didn't get the lowest grade you can get, but I still failed.
Yeah.
Anything below a D is a fail.
Okay.
But I got an E in my A-level philosophy. So I I get a little bit I don't want to say bored, but I start to disengage a little bit when
I'm
we talk
sorry.
about things like, you have to apologize, please. Talking about like existence and A is A, and I really like that Ayn Rand put her philosophy into novels, because that helps me understand in the same way that philosophers get into these conversations about A is A and existence, and
Yeah.
maybe that engages with you. But the Bible is the same thing, where it's like, it's a belief system that's put into a series of stories,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I can engage with. And it's the same way with Ayn Rand, where she wrote these novels about about competing belief systems, and the people in the novels are embodiments of those belief systems.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from with Rand. Is I know I've seen a few lectures by Leonard Peikoff, a few interviews with her, but most of what I understand from Rand is from her novels. And what comes across there is that she worships, you could say, the idea of a like maybe just the idea of competence,
Mm-hmm.
like usually men, but also women in her novels, who are,
Yeah.
they know what they're doing, they know what they want, they aren't embarrassed about that. They go for what they know is right, which is it's self-serving in the sense that they they do the best they can, and I can't even explain it, because she explains it so well. If you read the books, you understand, because the heroes are so
They're honest.
heroic, and they're honest, yeah, and they're fully engaged with reality, where they won't let Alex Jones shift their view of reality even 1%.
Right.
They are firm in their convictions, and
Mm-hmm.
not just that, they are right as well, because they're fully engaged with learning from reality, and
Right.
that is what it means to be great to her. And and
I agree
Ayn
with it.
Rand Ayn Rand seems to think that these sorts of people can exist, or that they should exist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where I think Ayn Rand differs with Christianity is that she builds up these Christ-like figures in real humans, in real characters
Yeah.
in her novels. But I think the Christians believe that only Christ is perfect,
Right.
and God is perfect, and we can only aspire to be that good by trying every day, by living your life the right way. Where she thinks that humans can be perfect, and she puts humans, but often men,
Yeah.
as the ideal to worship, because she doesn't like religion. She doesn't want to
Yeah.
worship a god. She wants to worship, but like, the ideal man, which is it's Christ-like, isn't it? What she's doing, it's similar to praising the Christ figure, but it's without the
Yeah. And I
without
think
the unattainability. It's like it's a more attainable Christ.
she's saying the same thing as Christians, which is because first of all, we can't follow the Father. We follow the Son, because the Son is the way to the Father, right? It's that thing in between the truth and ourselves. And if Christians are saying the thing worth following, so if Christians are saying seek the truth and follow he who knows the truth perfectly, it sounds like Rand is saying the same thing. Like, these are the men she's creating are people who sought the truth, and they just happen to be perfectly in touch with it, right? So at some level of analysis, I feel like she's tapping into the way we ought to behave, which is honoring truth fully and being so in touch with it that, yes, like you said, Alex Jones can't can't move us.
I think it is different, though, because she doesn't want you to follow her, and she doesn't want you to follow anyone else in particular.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost
okay.
like you're following the ideal version of yourself that you could
Well,
be.
she would, what would she say? She would say you follow your reason, right?
Yeah,
Right. So,
but
okay. This
go on.
this is just beautiful to me. So the word logos, reason, is also the word used in the Bible. In John 1:1, in the beginning was the word, and the word, God's
Yeah.
word, that which allowed him to create the universe, is Christ, right? So I think here's the difference between Rand and Christians. Rand thinks reason is yours, and Christians think reason is his.
Yes.
like in a in a bumper sticker. I think that's the
Yeah,
difference.
yeah.
And
We're on the same page.
yeah, and what I think is that we have the ability to reason, just like we have the ability to see. If you think of reason as another sense, your ability to reason is because you are. This isn't exactly right, but I think it's illustrative, so it's helpful. Just like my ability to see relies on the light going around me, my ability to reason relies on the order of the universe, right? So
Okay.
reason was sorry.
I was just I was just trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
Your
well,
analogy.
what I'm saying is like I can't see if there's no light, and I can't reason if there's no order. So I
Order
had this.
being sorry, order being what you were saying earlier, which is sort of a reliability where you prod something and you see how it reacts, and you prod it another time and it reacts in the same way. So
Right.
mostly reliably, that the order in the universe means that we can make experiments that will give the same result pretty much every time.
Yeah, or maybe it'll be a different result, but you'll remember that. Like there's some way to connect A and B, right?
Yeah, cause and
And
effect.
yeah, which it's kind of interesting because that's exactly how stories work too, right? It's just a series of cause and effect. So, and I guess a comment, a comment that I've made when explaining to people, because I got into this argument with somebody at my meetup group, and I told him that I chose to believe in Christ, right? And he goes, "You can't just choose to believe in Christ." He's like, "It's not a choice, right? You either believe it or you don't." And it's like the way I summarized it works perfectly with my little bumper sticker comment earlier, which is I knew I was a Christian when I decided to relinquish my logos for his. So I said, you know what? My reason, I don't even think it's my reason anymore. I think it's my ability to reason. My ability to reason is awesome, but it's limited. And I think that I'm tapping into, just like my eyes can only capture like a small subset of all of the light waves, I think my sense that allows me to reason can only capture a small subset of all of the order of the world.
Yeah.
And recognizing that and saying there's still more order out there that I'll never be able to touch. That is like kind of the transition to becoming a Christian.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is interesting. I think I can be on board with that.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I don't hear that very often.
I'm glad I was fine. For a minute there, you lost me. I thought I was going to have to be nodding my way through it and trying to pretend to understand, but I really do get it.
Yeah. Well, and I find that when I say that to Christians, they're like, yeah, and they like the way I put that, and it rings true to them. But when I say that to atheists about Christians, it's kind of what Paul said about Sam Harrison. Yeah. They're like, no, they say, oh yeah, that I'm on board with, but that's not how Christians believe. And it's like, it is how they believe, but it's kind of like, what a helicopter is. Your camera is blurry.
Oh shit! I thought it was.
Yeah. Like it didn't fix.
Blurry?
It's fine. But an analogy I've been using recently is like, you know what a helicopter is. So if I draw, actually, I'll just do it. I'll draw it.
Nice.
And I'm going to draw. I'm not going to do a good drawing. I'm going to do a terrible drawing.
A meme popped into my head while I was talking. You seen that meme recently where you got one person crying on one side going, no, you can't just believe that God exists because you want to, and then the guy on the other side's going like, haha, God goes brutal. I couldn't really think of the whole thing, but they it's like,
I've not seen this meme. No,
it's a meme format. I don't know. I have to show it to you, but I hope someone who's watching knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, somebody. Hey, Jamie, pull that up.
Bring that up, Jamie.
I need my own Jamie. Yeah, your camera's getting increasingly blurry.
Yeah, shit. I'll just try this trick again.
It like tries to auto adjust for you.
Focusing. Yeah.
It's a little better. It's not, yeah, that's a lot better. Okay, so there's my really bad drawing. But what is that?
I love it. I'm supposed to say helicopter, right?
Yeah, but I mean, and you would, if I didn't say that was a helicopter, you could probably piece that together.
Maybe like my third guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a great helicopter, and I think Peterson has used the helicopter as an example because I could draw a really detailed helicopter, and it's still not going to be a real helicopter. You're not going to be able to fly it. It's going to be missing something. There's not going to be all the information there. But in another way, all of the information is there for you to understand that I'm trying to tell you helicopter. And what was I going to say about that? I think when Christians talk, like they're so used to talking to each other, and they can just use words. You know, they call it Christianese, and they can use words, and it's like they can speak in low resolution and get the full point across.
It's quick.
But to outsiders, which I was not too long ago, none of that used to work on me. And the funny fact is now when I talk to atheists, I wind up hearing the same exact phrases come out of my mouth that did not work on me when I was an atheist. And I catch that and it like, I don't know, it makes me feel bad.
I know what you mean. Yeah, exactly. I found myself thinking that what was it? Like this idea of sin I started thinking about recently where, you're not all you could be. And sin isn't just what God says is wrong. It's like it's like to me, sin is like everything holding you back. And you can name like 10 sins, but those aren't all the sins just because those are the ones that are named in the Bible. It's just like I think there's a lot of the modern ways that we visualize morality are, whether you're hurting someone else or not, as if that's the only way you can do wrong. And there's legally that is kind of how laws are enforced. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I think this word sin is so useful because it encompasses not just hurting others, but also just sort of letting yourself down.
And I would say, because you keep saying yourself and others, I think a consequence of that is that you hurt yourself and others. But it seems to me that all sin, and the Bible would say this, all sins are against God. So for me, it's like if you list even just 10 sins, that's not all of them, but you could start to see a pattern, and they all seem to distort the truth, right? They all seem to be, dishonoring the truth. And if you use truth and God interchangeably, they're all dishonoring God. And all of a sudden it starts to make sense. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
Because, what does it mean to steal? It means, like, because if I came up to you and said, hey, can I have that apple? And you were like, sure. And you gave it to me. I didn't steal. I didn't deceive you at all. But if I took the apple without you knowing, the without you knowing part is deceit. And it's like, well, therefore it's a sin. Like, for me, that's why I think the tell the truth and then in parentheses, at least don't lie, is so important. Because it's like, if you just manage to tell the truth and never, or at least don't lie, you will basically, you'd probably be one of the best human beings on the planet. You'd still be sinning. I don't think that's enough, but.
Yeah, I was just using sin as an example of this religious language that's a lot easier to use than going through all of the steps of describing what you actually mean. Where once you and I both understand what we mean by sin, it's a lot easier to say that. And I know exactly what you mean. Now when I hear someone say God loves you, it means so much more to me. And actually, it does bring me that comfort that it didn't when I thought that God was just like a guy who I couldn't see. Yeah, the flying spaghetti monster. Yeah. Flying spaghetti monster loves you doesn't mean much, does it?
No.
Because it's when you don't believe in it. But even now, I feel when someone says God loves you, it sounds like something like you matter. Yeah. And the bad things that you do are bad, but no matter what you do, you are still, you are worthy of love in the abstract.
Yeah.
And somebody could love you, and you could be better, and all of this, like it means so much in just those words. And I'm sure it means something different to everyone who believes in those words. But it is a shorthand, and you're absolutely right. And I don't know if you needed that crappy picture of the helicopter to demonstrate that, but I'm on board with it. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit when I was hearing Paul Vanderklay. Just in one of his random sermons, he was talking about this idea of grace and how it's by the grace of God that we receive everything
Yep.
good in our lives. And that, I guess that's kind of the difference between the Randian. I feel like that goes against Rand, like the things that you do well in your life that make your life better. The Christians would say that comes from God, because God gave you the ability to make your life better. And you might have been you could have been born disabled, you could have not been born at all. The fact that you're even alive, you should thank God for. And
Yeah.
that meant so much to me, even though I still don't believe in God, and I know that you think I do, and I know that Paul thinks I do.
Well, because what you just said
days,
sounded exactly like God. Like you said it better than a lot of people. So then it's like,
yeah.
are you sure you know?
Because the thing, like, it's like you said, that they're speaking another language, and if you say, there but for the grace of God go I, you just say that is actually saying it more succinctly and better. What I'm saying, I'm translating, and it's an imperfect translation, but I'm trying to say it in a way that someone can hear who doesn't understand Christianese.
Yeah, and I think that's why
I just want to correct you, because I'm not saying it better, I'm saying it worse.
Well, you're saying it with more words.
Can hear it. You're saying it with extra steps, yeah.
Yeah, well, I like the way Peterson says it. Like, he'll say things like, God is that which allows the men who tell the truth and are competent to arise to the top, right? It's that mysterious force that allows that to happen. I like that kind of definition. Or like, talking about grace. I think we all recognize all the ways that we probably could and should be dead as individuals or as mankind. Like, it's bizarre that somehow we're flying around on this rock and we're not dead. And, an atheist might say, well, yeah, but all of the ways that didn't work. The only thing that worked, like however life is able to survive, it's like obvious that that's going to be the thing that continues on. But it's like, yeah, but to me, it's so interesting to just know that I did not have to be here. And I personally have a few instances in life where I probably should have died, and it's just that, like, knowing that I could be dead and I'm not, and that I can continue to make terrible mistakes. I probably did some things as a kid that probably should have got me thrown into juvenile. You know what I mean? Like, I've gotten into a lot of fights when I was in middle school, and some reason I didn't. I didn't go down that path somehow. And to not feel like there's some sort of, grace is a perfect word for it, but there's something there that's making it so you don't just instantly die. I can't ignore that anymore like I used to.
You know what's the amazing thing about having a kid? I don't know if it's just being a woman or just being me, but it is amazing when, without being too graphic about it, there's nothing there, and then the next day there's something there.
Yeah.
And you just put food in your mouth like you do every day, and this thing is growing. And the entropy of the universe, usually when you put food in your mouth, it gets broken down and it becomes something that's awful.
Yeah.
It becomes less ordered in the energy, it gets degraded into a lesser form. But when you're pregnant, the opposite happens, and you're making food, and then you're turning that food into another person, and you're not doing it. It's just you're just putting food in there,
right? And then
it's ordering. It's disorder that becomes order. It's making a person, and I don't know how to build a person.
No,
and I can, I can go to a science class for 10-year-olds and learn about the birds and the bees, and I can understand
the process,
how it happens,
yeah.
But I don't really understand what's going on.
No, and here's even if we do, like, if we understand it more and we're able to replicate it in like an artificial womb or something, that doesn't disprove God. It just shows how complicated God's work is, right?
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that made me start that start thinking about God in a different way. The way that you're saying, where it's just the existence of the fact that order can come out of disorder,
or out of
when
nothing.
The tendency of the universe is usually to break down higher levels of order into chaos and entropy. It's one of the laws of thermodynamics. I don't remember which, but that is God as well, I guess you could say. That's just the other side of the coin.
Or it's the devil.
Sure, I mean, it's not always a bad thing, but yeah.
No, I'm saying like maybe the analogy there is, because the devil is constantly trying to break down order, and somehow there's still order. Like it's kind of there is something amazing about the idea that with all of the destructive forces in this universe, it's even here still.
Yeah, I think what Paul Van der Clay said that kind of made it into a nice image for me was that religion has become less popular as we discover more mechanisms that the universe obeys. We keep looking, we keep finding. He did this with his hands. I loved it.
I need to do my hands more.
You get this like low resolution, like push rock moves. Yeah, this is our first physics lesson from years ago, and even beavers understand that. And you get these like we understand physics and chemistry and biology, and we see the mechanism, and we no longer need to picture the hand of God because we see it happen as a result of basic cause and effect, and we take out the kind of magical element of it, and we get lower and lower into lots and lots and lots of mechanisms, and now we understand atoms, and we understand the things that the atoms are made of inside the atom, and why the atom sometimes destabilizes, and the electron moves from a higher orbital, and it's amazing how much we understand that it's no longer mysterious, and yet it also is.
Yeah, you lose. It's kind of like I have a bust over there of Abraham Lincoln, right? And if I know it's Abraham Lincoln because I'm zoomed out, but if I zoom in too close, like I'm just going to get individual particles of a statue. Like there's no way from that vantage point can I know what it all amounts to. I have to zoom out to see Abraham Lincoln.
I think a Monet painting is a better, all the dots, impressionists.
What are you saying though?
A Monet painting.
Oh, how Monet. It's like, is it like pointillism, or is it kind of like the way a magazine prints?
It's just dots.
Okay.
You get paint on the end of your brush, and he didn't brush up and down or whatever. He just dabbed.
Oh, okay. But if you zoom in too close, you just get dots. But if you zoom out, if you zoom out, you can see. Yeah, I think there's something to that. The fact that the more we zoom in, as I'll say, but the more we know, we seem to be losing track of. How did he say it? We're losing.
He didn't say that. He said that obviously I can't say it as smart as he did. He said that we gained confidence in our ability to understand the mechanisms of the universe and to control them. But at the same time, when we apply that same process to the human mind, it just becomes more mysterious. We don't understand. The fact that we keep looking in the brain and we can't find consciousness. Consciousness is just the result of millions of electrical movements.
Right.
And when we found that out, it's like, it's like you can't get any deeper than that. We don't really know what consciousness is or why it came about. And, if you turn off any one of those electrons, it doesn't make a difference. So no one electron moving is causing you to be conscious.
Right.
It's all of them together. And what he was saying is that the universe is becoming simultaneously more mysterious and less mysterious at the same time. Right. I think
the more we know, the more we know, the more we realize
we don't know
that we don't know. Yeah. There's like the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Sure. Yeah. I think what I took away from that though is that when we understand how mechanism happens, we stop appreciating the fact that it happens at all. So when we, now that we understand the biology of how a baby gets made inside a tummy, so, we know about the gametes meeting and it implants on the cell on the uterus wall. And the wall, nourishes it with the blood of the, yeah, inside the woman. The blood is enriched by the proteins in the food that get breaking. And we know every step of that now.
Yeah, and that kind of lends itself to why people do justify and say, well, it's just a clump of cells, it's not a baby. Where 1,000 years ago, people didn't know what was going on in there. They didn't know anything about cells. As far as they knew, there was a baby in there. That's it. Like,
yeah, well, they probably didn't even know. I mean,
well, yeah.
What I'm saying is that it's a mistake to think that because you understand the mechanism, that it's now no longer impressive.
Right. No, I agree.
Mysterious. I think when you feel in awe of the universe, you are feeling the presence of God. And
yeah,
I feel like that's my quote of the day. I'm sure I'm not the first person who said that.
Maybe I need to change the title of the video to that.
Do you know what I mean? Though that you can learn how a gluon becomes a lepton, and the electron orbitals and everything, and there is a beauty to that, learning about the universe. And I think where Christianity has gone awry in the past has been the people in power feeling like they're losing control because the universe is becoming less mysterious, and because Galileo is telling them that the Earth moves around the sun,
right?
And when really what we should be saying is that these beautiful things that are happening, it's literally marvelous. It's a marvel that these things are happening at all, and rather than moving away from God, I think that should be making us feel closer and just in awe of God.
Yeah, and I wish people were just okay with having both. And I actually find Christians have no problem with science. It's always the people who basically turn science into a religion that have a problem with Christians, right? And it's like, a thought I've had is like, Michael Jordan was a phenomenal athlete, right? He's old now. I'm sure he's still pretty good, but he was a phenomenal athlete. And his muscles and like the angle in which he jumped and released the ball, all of that, and people do, they'll like freeze frame Michael Jordan playing because it was just amazing to watch. He didn't think about any of that when he played. Who knows exactly what he thought about, but I bet you it would resemble much more a story than a technical science document, right? Like, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to break it down and understand it, because say you're playing chess. Well, I don't know. I'm not a chess player, but I can imagine there's some value in sitting down and really dissecting the game and understanding all the possible plays you could make at any given orientation of the game, right? But there's also probably something to be said about feeling the board, if that even makes sense, and having a sense of the story that's being played out while you're playing that match. And I feel like we shouldn't throw out the zoomed out thing just because we can zoom in. I really do wish we could hold on to both.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely using the right analogy, because there are details that you see in the zoomed out that you don't see in the zoomed in version.
Yeah.
And just to play off your analogy of the chessboard, I don't know about normal chess playing, but from what I know of the really high level chess players, is that it comes down to pattern recognition. So that the intricacies of the chessboard are so deep that you can't actually analyze, or rather, it's better to see the pattern of, okay, so the rook is here relative to the other piece, and looking at where your pieces are relative to your opponents. You've been in a situation like this before. There's like billions of combinations of different board layouts that you can get in chess. So you've never had this situation before, but you've been in a similar threat with a similar advantage. and that is how they operate, is just by committing these patterns to memory.
Yeah.
Not by explicitly learning them, but just by accumulating experience. And they chess players have an innate they're very intelligent people, but they have a very specific skill set, which is to recognize these patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever read Richard Dawkins, he explicitly attributes religious beliefs and religious thinking to pattern recognition. So the rain comes when we do this certain dance, and maybe it's a coincidence, but we'll do the dance anyway. And then the rain, when the rain does go, we'll go, okay, that was the dance. And when it doesn't, we'll go, oh, we didn't dance well enough then.
But there's other patterns there too, because they are also a tribe that didn't die because they did the rain dance. Now, the rain dance might not bring the rain. They might just be dancing until it rains, but it might be bonding the tribe so that they don't tear each other apart. Where the other tribes that weren't doing the rain dance, they were all dying off for some, but you don't have to know exactly the mechanism. We can tell a story like that, but if you know that it works, keep doing it. And it's kind of interesting because like somebody had said, I don't know if it's from the Bible or just some old text, that there's some line about it effectively meant not to sleep where you poop, right? And it kind of begs the question, how did ancient people know that? They didn't know about germs. They didn't know, right?
Bad.
It just smelled bad, like pretty much that. Or they noticed that the people who did sleep close to it, they were sick more often. So all they're doing is noticing these patterns. They didn't have to know anything about germ theory to know not to do that. And same thing, like apparently there was a controversy years ago, like centuries ago, where because the same doctor that would deliver a baby, the same doctor that would do an autopsy to try to figure out why somebody died, would then go deliver a baby. Now, they had the wrong story, and I actually don't think it's wrong, but they noticed that if you didn't wash your hands before going from death to life to delivering a baby, that the baby had a higher chance of dying. So they concocted a story that you were transferring like death himself to the baby or something. And I don't know. I feel like now the way I look at things, I think it's unwise to say that that's false. I think a more intricate explanation is, well, there's these germs, it's decomposing, and you're entering that into the kid's body and he gets an infection. It's like, yeah, but you are also transferring death into the baby. Like,
it's a different way of saying the same thing.
Yeah. So as an exercise, it's really fun to think about 100 or 200 years from now. What things do we hold to be self-evident or we believe to be true today that 100 years from now, they're going to laugh at us? They're going to be like, oh, they thought because the brainwaves stopped that the person was dead. Maybe 100 years from now, that's actually recoverable. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is amazing what we understand and what we don't understand. It is approaching. Well, it's now past the the time when I said I'd be off.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can wrap up.
I was enjoying this, but I just wanted to say. I guess we should wrap up the conversation. I've been reading a book, or I finished the book now. It was a novel. I haven't read a novel for a long time, but my friend wrote a novel. This is completely unrelated, by the way, and it's a novel he wrote when he was like 18 about being. I'm sure you were 18 once, and you do you remember what it was like when? God, what am I even saying this? What I'm trying to say.
Well, you already started, so now you gotta.
When I read the book, it reminded me what it was like to be 18 again, where I felt that I didn't have anyone who I could discuss my ideas with. I felt like I couldn't put I couldn't put my my thoughts and my anxieties into language that would resonate with other people, and it was very lonely time. And I reading this book again, it just reminded me how precious it is that I can be on YouTube and I can connect with other people who are thinking about the same things as me, and they're not just giving me a blank stare.
Yeah.
People who really get it, and not everyone gets it, and that's fine because it's such a big platform. And Like I said before, I these days, if I feel grateful to someone, I just try to tell them instead of trying to overthink it and being like, "Is this a weird thing to say?" So I'm just saying thank you, and this and talking to you really meant a lot to me.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you, because I literally have stopped the interview thing for a while because one, it's hard to find people to talk to, and two, a lot of my views have been shifting. So thanks for being open to, last time we talked, I was actually a very different person. So,
well, you seem the same to me.
Yeah, that's true. You were
So
not a mother.
I think yeah, I think people always think that they oh, I'm so different now, but it's like what I was saying earlier. The other people, they just see the same person. It's
Yeah.
kind of frustrating when you think you've grown so much, and then people are just like, "No, you're the same you always were."
Yeah. Well, there's some truth to that. I wanted to read this really quick quote because I think it summarizes very well the experience of me going from atheist to Christianity, and that was a theme.
Okay,
So, and it's by this guy. It's by an astronomer named Robert Jastrow, and it goes, "For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountain of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. And as he pulls himself up over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries." I kind of like that because it's really how it feels. And I don't know if you're kind of experiencing some of that, where you're like, wow, these books actually say a lot of true things in different ways.
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was very nice chatting and catching up. And also,
Thanks.
like, I don't know, try to get people to my YouTube channel to be awesome. But if you want to also post it on your channel, like maybe give it a few days, feel free.
Yeah, my channel, they're all I keep joking about it, but I'm serious that I feel like my viewers are like tuning out,
Oh,
and I try
probably.
not to care too much about who's following me, but they people who hit the subscribe button, they really weren't turning up for a theological debate, and
True.
it is such a personal thing that I think it just doesn't click with a lot of people, and they've got to find their own way to understand all this stuff, and I I don't want to harp on and on about it. If I can find a clip from this chat that I think what do you call it, atomizes it well,
Yeah,
sums
yeah.
it up.
Feel
What it's
free
saying.
is all I'm
I'll try.
saying.
I'll try and think of. Well, if you can think of anything, but I'll try and think of a clip that might work as a good way to point to the recording of this.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be awesome. I would appreciate that. Cool. Well, you have a good night. It's probably like super late by you.
That's 10.
Oh,
It's all right.
well, past my bedtime at
Anyway.
least. Have a good one.